Hello, this is my Shoptask 1720 XMTC combination metal machine. It's a lathe, milling machine, and drilling machine. I've had this and been using it for I think about 4 years now, and there are a few things that I've discovered about it that I thought might be helpful if I point out the problems that I found and the causes of them, in case other people who have these machines also have the same problems. They might be able to remedy them as I did. If you have excessive play or backlash in your x-axis, meaning you can turn this handle a great distance before the carriage starts to move, the nut that is held in for the lead screw into that carriage has a tendency to come loose. Right in here, that screw, see if we can zoom in on it. Right here holds the nut for the lead screw. When I got this machine, that had worked loose, and when you would turn the crank, it would move the nut as opposed to the carriage. Now I actually put a different screw in there. You can access it through this hole. If you're lucky and nothing has worn, you can just snug that back up, and it should take you back to a reasonable amount of backlash. If you find that your lathe spindle is excessively noisy, I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear this. It's kind of like a crunchy noise. When I took this machine apart to put new spindle bearings in it, I found out what the cause of that is. This lever moves 2 gears side to side in there to give you your different feed rates. If you move this all the way till it stops, it puts the face of one of those gears against the face of another gear. If you move it the other way, it does the same thing on the other side. I don't know if you'll be able to pick this up with the camera, but listen. Hear the difference? It probably won't hurt anything, but just for peace of mind, what I do is when I switch this, I back it up just a hair, and that noise goes away. Now it still has some different noises from the change gears and stuff back here, but this way same noise. Bump it back a little bit, it goes away. If you have an excessive amount of free play in this crank, this is more than I would like. I may have to do some adjustment. Inside here, on each edge, this shaft goes through bushings. Okay, these are the bushings. There's that shaft. Right there's the shaft. These bushings, as far as I can tell, the only thing that holds them in is this set screw. Now these screws I put in here. This is the screw that was originally in there. I don't know if you can make that out, but the flathead where you put the screwdriver in that screw is terrible. A screwdriver won't stay in it. It's impossible to get these tight. Now I'm pretty sure those screws are metric, but these are 1024, and they screw in there and they tighten up, and I ground a point on them. These are cap screws, so this one, the pulley's in the way, but you can get a ratchet with an Allen and tighten that. Now, I've not taken these out. I've had this whole thing off when I put new bearings in here, but I never really took this apart. If you take these screws out, you can, and take the spring off the back, you can take this off. But this one here is sitting just a little bit proud, and I think I know how I did that. I had a lot less play in this, but if you use this fine adjustment for drilling and you put a lot of pressure on it, you can push these out and then you wind up with some slop in here. And I did that the other day. It'll become obvious because behind here, the gear that's attached to this shaft is round. The gear that's on this has that profile on it. And so if it moves side to side, it'll tighten up this shaft. So really, these things just need to be flush. Maybe, if they're flush, they'll be centered. You may have to put them a little bit in to take out the last little bit. You don't want to make it too tight. But in any case, I just ground points on these and put them in and snugged them up. And I had it, so I only had, I don't know, just a little bit of free play there. Because what happens when you're milling, sometimes, let's see if we can move over here. If this thing is too loose, when you're milling, it'll literally, if you have it, say right here, it may fall down like that. If it falls down hard enough, it might bump your quill a thousandth or two, which for most of the stuff I do is not a big deal. I thought about taking these out. My plan is to adjust these so this feels really good. Drive these screws in good and tight to put a mark on them, and then take this apart. And maybe they do have detents in them. I've never had them out, but if not, I'll put a detent in each one, keep track of which way they face and which one goes where, and then I should be able to screw these into that detent. But they're serious. I have turned this one. I've pulled it just a little ways out of there already. I can't get it out without taking this whole thing apart, which is not difficult, but it takes away from time that you can be using the machine. So for now, I just kind of ram these screws down in there. If I get too much play, I loosen it, I tap this in a little bit, and I snug it back down. That seems to work. This little dial here, I don't even have this screwed tight. I don't use it because I have the DRO to tell me where I'm at. But they also put an oiler up here, which is kind of useless. You can put oil in here and it'll drip right out the bottom. When I had this apart, I greased all this. There are brass gears in there, or bronze, something like that. So you want to try to keep them lubed, and you don't want to put a lot of stress on them. So I've actually tried to make it a habit to use this direct drive for drilling, and then this only for feed for adjustments on milling. Okay, this is the lock for the quill. Originally this had it was a handle with a stud that would turn in these threads. This side's threaded. That started to feel crunchy and tight at times, and I noticed it wasn't holding the quill. If you were doing something like fly cutting, you might be taking a 10,000 deep cut when you start and be down to a 5,000 or less deep cut till you get to the other end of what you're working on. So I started to worry about these threads stripping, and I didn't like the idea, if they did strip, of helicoiling them and whatnot. So what I did, I removed it, I tapped these threads to clean them up, I put this stud in there, I screwed it in and tightened it up, and I was able to get it good and tight. So I took it back out and I Loctited it in there. And now I just have this washer and this nut. Now I have to use a wrench to lock that, but it locks so much better. You know, this thing is cast. I don't think it was ever a good idea when they made this to put threads to be turned so often back and forth and stressed in a cast piece like that. So now nothing turns in here, just this nut turns, and I'm still conscious of how tight I make it. I try to only make it as tight as I need to. You may notice in these machines too, if you really tighten this, you can hear a difference in the spindle bearings. I'm not going to say it hurts them. It might not be the bearings, but this quill sounds different if I really mash down on that thing. Okay, that pretty much wraps it up. I believe that's everything that I wanted to show. Those things were just things that annoyed me, and I figured out what caused it or a way around it. Now, this machine also has some modifications to it. Has a DRO, has a Y-axis power feed, and a couple other things. And I'm going to try to make videos and cover that stuff. I haven't decided how to do it yet, if I want to do it in one video or do a video on the DRO and then a video on the power feed. But I do want to throw a shout out to the Eddies YouTube channel, the Eddies. Eddie has a machine that's the predecessor of this machine, and they're very similar in many ways. But he does some good work on that machine, and he was actually one of the first people to comment on my repair video when I put the lathe spindle bearings in, and so we kind of communicate back and forth a little bit. And I know he's interested in seeing how I did this power feed, and I will probably make a video on that. But with the time I have and other things I have to do, it might take me a while to do it. So in any case, hope it was helpful, and hey, thanks for watching.